Seeing is believing, or so they say. We're going to be talking about, in this first little sense, in the sense of sight, right? Vision. And of course, we think about the eye as a vital part of that. The eye is so complex. We don't even realize it because of what it does involuntarily or automatically without us thinking. Let's dive into it. As you take your notes, just fill in as you go. There's a lot of stuff that's going to be kind of repetitive, and then also explain further as we get into it. So the eye is the sensory system's organ of sight, of course, and there's so many different parts of it. I think the first part of your notes is like a little chart. Just hold on. I promise you're going to get there. The eye sees by gathering light that passes into it from the environment around us. That light is perceived on certain parts of our eye, and then the light that's taken in is sent to our brain to make sense of it. It descrambles up everything that we're seeing instantaneously so that we can see and make adjustments, right? This visual cortex is so adaptive to explaining what's going on and understanding what's going on. Of course, we've had a lot of experience seeing things. Most of us since we were born. I had a friend, or I still have a friend, I just don't see him that often, who is blind. I guess he never sees me. Ha, horrible joke. But he's not one to need a lot of sympathy or anything like that. But he made the statement one day, yeah, I'm sure you people that can see have it a lot easier, or you can do things a lot quicker is what he was talking about. He was actually navigating a building that both me and him were very familiar with, but he took a little bit longer. And I told him, hurry up. He's like, people that can see, I'm having to remember my steps, and it takes 20 steps from the doorway to the turn. I just see it and I move. Right? So, and we do that without even thinking because of our experience with vision. Our visual cortex is so well adapted. So looking at the anatomy of the eye, here's all the different parts. I welcome you to pause it at this point. By the way, this blind spot, that's what down there, it is not on that chart. So don't get crazy on me. Last one's blood vessels down there. So you may want to take a minute, pause it. Alrighty. Trying to be cute with this video. And pause it and just write these down. We're going to explain them to the little column on the right as we go through it. All right, so the outer layers of the eye. The wall of the human eye has 3 layers. The outermost layer is this fibrous coat called the sclera. The sclera, and as you can see it right here, the sclera extends all the way around the eye and then also to the visual part of the eye, the part me and you can see on each other. We call this transparent front, transparent meaning we can see through it, the cornea. And through this transparent part, light is able to pass. The carotid, not carotid, that's the carotid artery. The choroid, I'm having a moment, is this middle layer which contains lots of blood vessels. Ignore the bell. Lots of blood vessels for the eye, feeds the eye. The retina is the innermost layer. As I die, the innermost layer, it's got the cell receptors. The photoreceptors that detect light. There's 2 cavities of the eye. Remember, a cavity is just an area that things fit within. One being, I'm in the way there of the line that passes up through there. These fluid-filled cavities, there's one in the front and one in the back of the eye. The anterior, remember anterior means front. The anterior cavity is at the front of the eye. It's this area in between the cornea and what we'll see is the lens. It's got a watery fluid called the aqueous humor. The posterior cavity, posterior meaning back or behind, it's behind the back part of the eye, behind the lens, all the way to the retina. So this is the fat part of the eyeball there. It's a gel-like fluid. It's not nearly as watery as this. It's more like jelly, vitreous humor. All right. So looking at the front part of the eye, we have one part what's called the pupil. The pupil is an opening. So the pupil is really a vacant space, but it allows light to enter in. The iris is the colored part of our eye. It's got pigments in there that gives us, brown eyes or green eyes or blue eyes or hazel eyes or whatever. But the iris is actually a smooth muscle. Remember, smooth is involuntary. Smooth muscle is involuntary. And this alters the diameter of the pupil by opening and closing depending on how dark or light it is. Behind that, there's the lens. The lens is a transparent disc where light goes through and helps focus that light. The lens helps focus that light on the retina, this part of our eye, the interior wall of our eye that contains the photoreceptor cells. The ciliary body is some muscles that actually change the shape of the lens. This lens can be kind of fat like it is right here, or it can be very slender and slim. We're going to look at that in a moment. So that's what we're looking at right now. Accommodation is the process of that lens adjusting. So if we're needing to see something very close or something very far away, our lens, by use of those ciliary muscles, can actually move our lens from being very fat and short to very long and skinny. And here's what happens. The ciliary muscles contract, meaning they pull together, they tense up, increasing the curvature of the eye. So when they tense up and just like a muscle making a muscle, they contract, causes this lens to fatten up and thicken, right? When that lens is thickened, the increased curvature allows us to focus on things close by. So if we're reading a book or as you're looking at the screen right now, our lens is very thick. If we're looking at something very far away, and this happens instantaneously, right? This muscle, the ciliary muscles, relax. And so it allows our lens to flatten out, not be so thick and tensed up. And what happens is as that lens changes and thins up, we can focus on things farther away. So our eye does it very instantaneously. I'm looking at the screen and then looking at that wall over there in my room, and I can see both of them because those muscles are causing my lens to thicken and to thin automatically, involuntarily, to allow my eyes to adjust to it. The rear anatomy of the eye, the retina, is a sensory layer at the back of the eye. Okay, it's got 120 million photoreceptor cells called rods and cones. We're going to look at those a little more in depth in a moment. Rods and cones. They detect light and send nerve impulses along the optic nerve to our brain. Let me move that fat guy over there. There he is. Okay. So we pick up signals on the photoreceptor on our retina. It moves to the optic nerve. The fovea is a dip. It's the center part of our retina. Most of our color sensitive cells are right there. Okay. You've heard of the blind spot before. It's actually an area that's a small part of the retina. Go back. Where we can't see because there's no photoreceptors there. Right. It's the part where the retina attaches to the optic nerve. It's why if you have something like right here on the side of your head, you cannot see it. You might have done that before with like a spot. There's lots of different optic illusions. It's also why you can't really see people. Where is it? Right about here. I can't see my hand anymore because of that blind spot. My retina can pick up all the other things around me. The light coming into my eyes can bounce on that, can be perceived on that retina, the rods and cones on it, but I can't see that one little area. It's kind of interesting when you really start researching the blind spot. Speaking of rods and cones, they are sensory cells that detect different properties of light. Okay, cones are going to be more. They detect the color of the light. They can see. God Almighty, making me mad, y'all. Cones can detect the three primary colors and also the hues that come with them: red, green, and blue. They are found near the center of the retina, and like I mentioned a minute ago, highly concentrated in that fovea. So cones detect color. Cones detect color, C and C. Rods detect the brightness of light. They only see, if you want to think of it that way, in black and white. They detect how bright something is or how dark something is. But these rods and cones worked hand in hand to show us this is bright red, or just like you're seeing on the screen there in our notes, or this is a darker red. Okay, rods detect brightness of the light, and also helps smooth out some of those colors. Cones detect the colors of the light. There's some accessory structures we're just going to run through real quick. Just nice to know. Eyebrows and eyelashes, of course, their job is just to move foreign bodies away. When you blink, or you might see something stuck in your eyelash, your eyebrow does that to an extent, especially with things like sweat dripping down to our eyes. It can get caught up there. The eyelids, of course, protect the anterior portion of the eye, the front portion, the part that we see. Conjunctiva, you might have heard of conjunctivitis before. This is a thin, clear membrane. Conjunctivitis is when that conjunctiva gets swollen. This is what protects our eye. When eyelashes or particles get in our eye, they get caught up in the conjunctiva. Conjunctiva is lubricated. It's very moist, and it helps steer away things that can harm our eye. Tear ducts that are found right here in our eye, they produce tears. And these tears not only moisten, but they can help kill microbes. There's actually a little bit of antimicrobial chemical inside of our tears. There's also salt, which bacteria doesn't tend to like. So how do we see? How do we see? I'm just going to go ahead and get rid of me. There we go. How do we see? Well, I'm going to try to at least. Here is some different. So light passes through the lens. Light passes through the cornea, coming into the eye. It gets focused into our pupil. Our dim light dilates or constricts our pupil. Our cornea constricts or dilates our pupil to allow more light in or less light in. Step 2, light passes through the lens on the back side there, which focuses on the retina. We've already talked about with accommodation how that lens can move, can thicken or thin. Then light hits the layer of sensory cells, those cones and rods on our retina. Rods and cones then send a nerve impulse along the optic nerve to our visual cortex in our brain. It's a fun fact here, the optic nerves are actually, they flip the image. So when they receive it, everything is upside down. But we move it right side up in our visual cortex. And there's just a summary real quick. This will help you on one of your charts, but this is something good to review. Make sure you understand what it's talking about when it talks about rods and cones or retinas. Just a little quick quiz. If we were in class, we would go through this, but for our purposes, you have it online. So just a couple quick disorders. This chart, you'll see this on your notes. I only have about 2 minutes left, so I'm going to hit the high ones. But you've heard of these hopefully before. Nearsightedness, farsightedness, astigmatism, cataracts, glaucoma, color blindness, macular degeneration, and nactylobia. And you can read a little more about those. 3 that I want us to look at is one is nearsightedness. Nearsightedness, it is actually where a condition in where close-up objects appear clear, but far away objects are blurry. All right, let me go back to it. There we go. This occurs when the eyeball is too long or the cornea is too curved. So you see the symptoms there. You can't really see far away objects. How do we treat it? Glasses, contact lenses. In some cases, laser surgery. Farsightedness or hyperopia. Today, guys, you can't see near objects nearby. They appear blurry. Things like reading a book or reading off a computer screen. How do we treat it? Eyeglasses. So you can see the causes is the eyeball is actually too short. It's compressed in, or that cornea, the outside there, is too flat. It's too flat, causing light rays not to focus correctly. Astigmatism is where the cornea is not perfectly spherical or a sphere, right? And this causes distorted images. Special eyeglasses or laser surgery can help with this. A lot of times the symptoms of this, things are blurry at a distance, astigmatism. You might be squinting to try to see it.